One of the things I used to have to do when I was in sports information was write a lot of advances. These may be previews of a season, they may be previews of a game or an event, but they're advance of the event happening or the season happening so you can give your audience something to look forward to. Again, not all stories are written after the fact. Sometimes you have to get the fans interested in watching the event. Whether that's through broadcast writing or print writing, you give them a preview of what's going to happen, who the key players are, what the implications of the event are going to be to try and pique their interest. In this day of social media, we use Twitter a lot to preview what's going to be happening, to let audiences know what the event is going to be and where they can find out further information. On the next few slides, there are 13 guidelines we want you to consider when writing in advance, not just in whether or not to write the advance, but in also what to write. So as I said, if you're trying to decide whether or not to write in advance, you need to think of the significance of a game. Is it a regular season game? Is it a postseason game? Is it for a conference title? Regardless, you may write the advance anyway, but this is going to give you an idea of what you want to write about. You also need to think about the tradition and history of the teams. For example, if Central Missouri is playing Northwest Missouri, you're talking about two of the charter members of the MIAA. If you're talking about the Mules facing Lindenwood, for example, Lindenwood is one of the newer schools in the MIAA, so you're going to want to focus on that. Obviously, you're going to want to talk about the records of the teams or the individuals that are competing in this event. If they're going to be coming up on a season, you're going to want to talk about the returning newcomer or the returning players. You may want to mention some newcomers, and then of course you also want to mention those players who have left and the impact of that leaving, and the impact of them leaving has on the team. For example, if you have a Harlan Hill Award winner, which is the Division II equivalent of the Heisman Trophy, and that player graduated, that leaves a significant hole in that player's position. You also want to look at the comparative scoring records against mutual opponents, whether or not one team is really destroying their opponents. Say you have two teams come in, for example, with 5-0 records. One team has squeaked by, the other team has dominated in those 5 games, and they've played the same opponents. That's going to kind of give you an idea of where this game might go. And then, of course, you also want to think about their physical and mental stability, the team is beat up, has a lot of injuries, whether they're coming off a devastating loss, whether they may be riding a high coming into this game, because that can give you an idea of how this game might come about and makes for some interesting advanced writing. And some more things to think about. Do mention the starting lineups and comments on changes in any lineups. If, for instance, you're talking about a basketball game and the point guard has changed, maybe the starting point guard's been injured, or maybe he just hasn't been effective and there's been a change there. Always, as we talk about with every other sport, we talk about the weather. If there's a projected forecast that we might be having a lot of rain or heavy thunderstorms or even tornadoes in this region of the country, that could have an impact on the game. So those things need to be prepared. You need to prepare for that. What system of play do they use? In tennis, it's a player's volley attack compared to her opponent's backcourt. In baseball, a team that's loaded with strong right-handed pitchers facing a team with two top left-handed pitchers, or a team with a lot of right-handed batters facing a team with a lot of right-handed pitchers, and who's going to have the advantage there. So think about that system of play. Do think of an individual angle. If it's a team sport, pick out one or two of the top individuals who are going to be competing. If you're talking football, you may have an All-America wide receiver going against an All-America cornerback. That can be an interesting battle, and you want to advise your fans to be watching for that. Well, advise the media to be watching for that if you're working in PR. And then think about a local situation. Is it homecoming? Is it a game? So, for instance, the Los Angeles Rams moved from St. Louis a few years ago. Their first game in Los Angeles, what's that going to be like? Those are the types of local angles that you want to consider. Occasionally, not always, but you might want to think about the tickets and the crowd situation. Are there going to be extra seats available? Is the game going to be blacked out for local fans? Is it a pay-per-view? Those types of things. You just want to consider that's just a little bit of extra information that some reader might be interested in, some viewer might need to know. Okay? Do think about taking some statements from coaches. This can be a standard Q&A. It can be a frequently asked questions feature, things like that. Be a little creative here and give the coaches a chance to speak about the game and what's going on. And then, if odds are available, there's a lot of betting goes on in sports nowadays, ladies and gentlemen. Think about the odds. Think about what's available out there. If you're talking professional sports, and their fantasy sports is huge, so you might think about which players are coming in with the top fantasy points, something like that, something a little bit different that makes people want to come to your paper, come to your magazine, come to your television broadcast. On these next couple of slides, I just give some other ideas, some things you might want to think about. Maybe you want to get players comments or comments from assistant coaches or coaches who maybe used to coach at the other school or the other team. You may want to think about doing a poll in advance to see, who you're going to. You may predict who's going to win, or you may ask fans who they think is going to win. You may want to look at the season's outlook advance or preview. Different types of things like that. These are different ideas. You're looking for anything that you can write about, that you can broadcast, that's going to give you an edge, that the information that the fans want to think or want to talk about. Again, keep in mind, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Fans are very, very articulate these days when it comes to sports. They're voracious when it comes to information. So whatever extra tidbits you can give them, provide it. Okay, and here are some final tips to get your readers' attention, or, now that we're talking broadcasting as well, some things that you can do in broadcast to get their attention. Use some graphics and color. USA Today cornered this market many, many years ago, and all the other newspapers followed suit. But also in television, think about some dynamic graphics, maybe some motion graphics you can use in After Effects, things that are going to, the tails of the tape, those types of things that are going to get the readers and the viewers paying attention. Highlight in advance every day with a teaser on page 1 of your paper, or if you're leading up to a big game like the Super Bowl or maybe the Olympics, you do a series of advances and you talk about a different facet of the game or a different facet of the event each day as you're leading up to it. Use computer designed boxes on the front page to give the tail of the tape or compare statistics like I mentioned. Talk to coaches not associated with the game to get their feedback and their input, who they think would be the favored team. A lot of times they will speak off the record. That's okay. A lot of times they'll speak anonymously. That's okay. But we can get some added information, some behind the scenes information that way. And then you might think about doing a full special section if you're talking about print, where you're going to provide multiple advanced stories, again, for something like the Olympics or the Super Bowl or the World Series, or if you're talking in broadcast, just a series of lead-ups or a series of special reports. All these ways can help your reader and your viewer become more acquainted with the game. They can help them become more acquainted with the season or the event, get them much more interested, and that's the name of the game, isn't it?